Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this week's Inspiring Leadership podcast. I'm delighted to have Zsuzsanna Recsey. Zsuzsanna is the CEO of Standing on Giants. It's a B Corp, which we'll talk about later, and it's about community building. And she'll also be talking about that as well. But Zsuzsanna, would you begin by perhaps telling us about how you came to be the inspiring leader you are today, the CEO of a very successful business of 70 of you? And before that you were a coach to the organization Standing on Giants. Who shaped you on the way?
Thank you, Jonathan. It's my pleasure being part of your podcast series. So I grew up in Hungary in a military household where obviously learning the values of disciplines and following directions and authority, respecting authority, really shaped my later career. And then when I started my career, that was the change of communism, when I had the opportunity to enter into the international banking world. And so the first 10 years of my career was with Citibank, where I experienced entrepreneurship in a communist country where we did not have any lending products, credit cards. So we were the first ones launching all these new features. Being part of a very young, very dynamic team was very interesting and made me grow very quickly. And then actually I skipped a short period of time, which was me focusing on preparing Hungary joining the EU. My first degree was in finance. My second degree was actually European studies, when I got a little bit closer to politics than I ever wanted. And that in a way shaped my future career as well. I met leaders early into my career who were very different, who I followed by in the corporate world, experiencing the more structured and international exposure to a wide variety of leaders.
So let's just stay with that one, because you're very modest. But I think you were working alongside the current leader of Hungary. Was it Viktor Orban? You saw him in the early days, didn't you?
That's correct. He used to lead the parliamentary committee for Hungary joining the European Union. And we, as the first year group who studied studied it in the economic context, some of us were working around him and supporting him, and the group of politicians, we were supporting them with information, translating international news, and actually we even published a book with my friend around this time about the European Union.
It's very, very interesting that you did that. Were you aware then that his approach, his playbook, as they call it in America, was going to be copied pretty much by Donald Trump and his advisors with Strategy 2025? And what we're seeing going on in America at the moment with the repression of the universities, the destruction of any opposition from the legal elements of the country, and the silencing of anybody who stands up to them. Were you aware that was his style then, or was he a different kind of person then?
I don't think that people change dramatically. I think this must have been a much less developed version of himself. Early signs are quite obvious as soon as you start working with people, what drives them, whether they are aligned to their own core values or my own core values. So I've seen that very early into my career. Those few years worked around him. It was a very different environment. He wasn't in power as such, but I think the signs were there.
Yeah, and it's interesting in your experience. I just share a bit of my own, but I'm interested in your experience. Sometimes we find ourselves working for someone whose values clash really badly with ours, but we don't want to rock the boat. We're trying to get on in our lives and perhaps get promoted or survive in a job, when there's time and again, actually, you should have said something. I had Neil Basu on. He's written an excellent book called Turmoil, and he became the assistant commissioner for sort of security and counterterrorism and things like that. But he talked about at times he as someone who was coloured, should have spoken out when they were not doing anything about the institutional racism in the Met Police, but he didn't. He even wrote a report saying that we've not followed through on those things, and they buried the report because it was so contentious. In your own career, I know there's been times when I've lacked the courage to speak out early in my career. Do you think you could have spoken out more, whether it be in Citibank or Barclays, or when you were working with someone like Orban, but you chose not to?
I think when you also prompted with one of those questions that what would be my advice to my younger self, I was thinking about exactly this. Me growing up in this military household, when I learned the respect of authority and the disciplines and following directions, I think that suppressed a little bit that capability and that responsibility. It's not only you can do it, but you should do it, which I've been embracing since. Definitely that variety of perspective is important everywhere, be it somebody as extreme as against your core values, but even just giving a perspective in a boardroom is super important, regardless whether you are the youngest person in the room and the least experienced. It is that would be my advice. And my plan was actually to come back to this EU environment and in Hungary and do more around that one, but I got carried away. I joined Citibank whilst I was actually completing the final diploma and just summer work and contracting work. And 10 years later, I still found myself, because I was exposed to that international environment, opening it up and never looked back. With hindsight, yes, I could have, but also put it into context. Very first job, very new environment, very young person. It is a difficult position.
And very interesting for you. So take the Citibank situation. Citibank in Hungary, in a former communist, authoritarian communist, now it's authoritarian right wing. It's interesting to go from the left to the right, but it's still still following rules, as you say. Brought up in a military family where following rules was important, and I was the same. My father was, in the Royal Navy, and so therefore my mother believed that we should do the right thing for society and follow the rules and don't rock the boat. I once wrote a paper called "The Army Needs More Maverick Leaders," and the man who went on to become head of the army said to me, "Very good, Jonathan, but don't publish it if you want to have a career in the army." And I didn't publish it. I lacked the courage to do it. I didn't publish it because it was too contentious, and I'm ashamed of myself, really, looking back on that. But anyway, being a dyslexic, it probably wasn't very well written, and it had more cartoons than anything, which were quite fun, and pointing the finger at the army and making a bit of a mockery of it. But in your time in that job, it must have been a real mix of paradoxes. On the one hand, authoritarian, Hungarian, previously communist, but now you've got this capitalist American, move quick, make money as fast as you can, innovate, be an entrepreneur in a big corporation, think on your feet, develop new markets, increase market share. What a weird mix. And I suppose that's given you a bit of agility, hasn't it, to live with what they call the person who can cope the best can live with two conflicting views and still cope with that, managing those two views in their heads.
Absolutely, and experiencing it very young, I think it helps as well. You cope with these things easier at that time, and the whole team was very young. We spent 12 hours, 14 hours in the job doing that, and learning from our international management, which was a fantastic exposure, a very different, eye-opening exposure to that type of leaders. But at the same time, actually, when I was working for Citibank, that's when Orban had his first prime ministership. And what we experienced at that time was along those lines. What you're saying is the polarization. You could see it even in the workplace, where we were not invited for lunch with those who were supporting the existing leader, and so on and so on. So that was a big contrast to live in your everyday life while you're working to those international standards and learning the new way of operating.
And you've touched on something quite interesting. One of the three things, Revenge of Power by Moises Naam, is a very good book. And in it, he talks about the three Ps. What you just mentioned, polarization. So the them and us. Them over there, they're bad. And us, we're all together and we're good Hungarians or whatever it might be. Not these immigrants. Though ironically, much of our countries, certainly Britain, is made up totally of immigrants, whether they be Normans or Saxons or Angles or wherever they've come from. And then more modernly from India and Bangladesh and Pakistan, Kenya and so on. So polarization, post-truth, where we've now got Facebook, which anoints the new leaders. Facebook helped Brexit happen. Facebook got Trump in the first time and the second time. So people put millions into these social media platforms and they pump out falsifications, untruths, but people think they're truth. They mix opinions with fact and they put opinions across as if they are fact. And I've found even on LinkedIn, as I get more annoyed about authoritarian leaders and misleaders, I call them, you and I have been talking about this, as opposed to inspiring leaders, like the ones that you've come to respect. And there was Nando, who recommended you as an inspiring leader. As your voices are being drowned out by authoritarians, whether it be Putin or Trump, or in Canada, luckily the authoritarian lost because Trump had ruined things for Canada. It's very important that we bring in the facts and not our opinions hiding as facts. And then post-truth, polarization and populism, to do what everybody thinks is what they want, but they're actually doing it for themselves. Just like you've now got one man rule in America, which was not what the forefathers, when John Hancock signed, who was one of my ex-wife's ancestors, signed with his signature. He didn't expect we were going to have a king, an emperor, on the throne. That wasn't what they wanted. That otherwise, why would they got rid of the king they had in England? They might as well just kept it going. So what's your thoughts on that? The three Ps: post-truth, populism, and polarization.
Absolutely, this is what we've lived through, and it's very interesting when you live it through slowly. Actually, that's what happened in the Hungarian context. Otherwise, you're mentioning Trump from pretty much a quick change and very dramatic changes right away. For us, it was a slower process, living it through, and absolutely the populism, which at that time, the subtle ways of introducing the new changes coming out of communism, where there was no communication whatsoever from the Western world, and suddenly that type of communication, what he's been following since, it got established at that time, and I think he perfected and to a level where you see currently how the constitution even got changed and people are still following, although we've got a hope now that we've got a strong opposition whose next year's elections hopefully stands a chance.
Well, let's hope that the opposition leader survives and doesn't suffer from the Putin disease of falling out of windows, which seems to happen to all Putin's opponents, and anybody who stands up to him either gets poisoned with nerve agent chemicals or gets thrown out of a window. We do need people to find their voice. Yeah. What a fascinating life you've led thus far. And as you talk about inspiring leaders, you've met a lot over time. You've coached some. Who would you like to give a shout out for that you found to be inspiring leaders? Perhaps one man, maybe a woman, and one of each, as we say. And what qualities you've admired in them as leaders?
Long list of female leaders. I've been very lucky of having leaders and mentors. I was always very conscious of actually having mentors in my life. Two very strong female leaders. Okay, let me pick Elisabetta Oster was my boss and Barclays. and she's a very inspiring leader who works very well with challenges. She's the type of person when you go into a meeting with, you really work on the biggest challenges, transforming her ideas into practical outcomes, real tough conversations, and you still end up coming out of the meeting smiling and energized. She transforms problems and opportunities into something exciting, tailoring it to the team's strengths and the people who she works with. And she is not a qualified coach, but she is using the coaching approach to actually encourage you and empower you to find your voice. Before that, I was always describing myself as the best right hand, the best second in command. That's what I played. I was a chief of staff to her as well for many years, and it was her who opened my eyes and said that you got to go to front line. You've been doing this, experience this. You've done the second, or you've done the coaching, but it's time for front line. So most probably, I would not have had the courage without Elisabetta to actually pick up a CEO role.
Yeah, well, and with great leaders like Elisabetta, and you've also worked with Diana Oppenheimer, Mike Amato, Nando, who we've had all of them on the podcast from the Barclays time, because they did have a cadre of really good leaders. They had some dreadful ones with his deep dive. Gosh, what was his name? He'd come in and scare everybody. Fritz Seegers. Fritz Seegers would frighten the bejesus out of everybody, and everybody be running around producing lots of graphs and charts just to show they knew every detail about everything in the whole of the bank. And it was a complete disaster, but he had absolute power. He was a bit like an authoritarian Orban. But with these inspiring leaders, they always have stories behind them. I know Diana Oppenheimer, who we've had on the podcast, and my wife and I have worked with her. I was lucky enough to be her coach. There's lots of stories that go around about them. I'm sure, as chief of staff to Elisabetta, and my daughter's just been chief of staff to the CEO of Ocado M&S, the mergers group, and she was a very inspiring female CEO. My daughter learned a lot there, as you were doing as chief of staff. What is a story that you could recount to capture the essence of why she was an inspiring leader, that just showed her values or her courage? Or can you think of a particular story that you remember that you witnessed?
Elisabetta's history, she's been there in very innovative stages of companies, being at McKinsey or one of the key stories, and I think, and she introduced to Edwina, us, who invented the Tesco Club card. And she was there part of that project, which was one of the first project which we used data for generating, monetizing really data and build on customer loyalty. And her relationship with the dunnhumby and
dunnhumby.
yeah, so the couple who invented that, she had the personal relationship with them as well as business-wise she works with them. So I know that they really inspired Elisabetta, and I could see that what I personally took out, other than the business idea and fantastic way of looking at data, is the cooperation between the wife and husband, and I think Elisabetta a little bit represented both of those. It was actually Edwina, the very business-like woman, whilst it was the husband who brought in the human context, the customer respect, and how you need to combine these two to actually get to the result where you want to. So when the values are complementary, adjust each other, that's amazing. And Elisabetta really lived up to both sides and taught me.
Yeah, and for those who are listening around the world who don't know who dunnhumby were, that they became the backbone of some very successful organizations. I think Tesco used them quite a lot, and other organizations, to get to the heart of who are our customers, what are their needs, what do they want when they go to the petrol station and they buy a Mars bar and a Twix and a can of Coke. When they're in there, what happens when we change this or we change that? And is that you could explain any more than what I've just given as an intro?
That's exactly it. Using customer behaviors and analyzing it to a total win-win. How can we provide better services based on data? And actually, Tesco Club Card was the first product based on this analysis and approach. Look at it, it's still very successful.
Genius. Okay. And Elisabetta is now the CEO of Oxfam. Is that right? Did you say?
No. Elisabetta was after Barclays. She was the chief data officer for Heineken.
Oh, Heineken, right.
And she left it a year ago, and she's been building her own business, a frugal AI-focused business, and she's doing lots of other stuff. NED and the speakers, and she's a fellow in Cambridge as well. So she's doing lots of work there.
You're still in touch with her, yeah?
Of course, she was here in my birthday party last Saturday.
And show us your nails. Come on, show us your nails from your birthday party.
If I must, 90s,
for those listening, we have Zsuzsanna with her very beautiful coloured nails from celebrating a special birthday. So happy birthday for then.
Thank you.
So you've been lucky with some really inspiring female leaders and male leaders as well. Let's have a think about what one of my CEOs said. I learned so much from my mistakes. I think I'll go and make some more. And I've never forgotten that, really. And so learning from your biggest mistakes, or even some dark moments which really set you back, both work or might be personal life, what's one that you'd be raw enough to share with us all? And how did you get yourself out of that dark moment, and what did it teach you?
Let's pick one from my professional life. It was the time when I transitioned within Barclays into a very UK-focused operation. The whole team was UK-based, UK team, and the customers were UK-focused as well. This followed a career of international businesses, from the emerging markets to developed markets, established businesses, launching businesses, where I always used to be a high flyer. And I got into this environment where suddenly my performance just dropped. I could not find my feet. And thanks to my leaders, I was assigned a coach, an executive coach, which was my first time meeting this fantastic intervention. And needless to say, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for that at the time. And two things and learnings and experiences there. One is the practical element of coaching, how it turns you around, it gives you the tools, it opens your eyes, finds the strategies as well as the tactics to be successful in your job, which happened with my case as well. Found my right niche in there and came back. At the same time, it's not enough. It also helped me to recognize the importance of the environment, how important it is that you work according to your strengths, which includes the way how it's organized around you, the people who you work with. And strengths, I always use this in the coaching terms, which is not only our learned skills. We are good at so many things which we learn, but it doesn't mean that we actually get the energy out of it, that we feel good in that environment. So this is when it has become very clear for me that the two need to align. You need to play on your strengths, find your strategy and tactics to be successful in an environment, but you have to align to the environment and to your core values. So this was both the strengths of coaching, which actually I understood following this experience, as well as me moving on and helping other people through coaching, finding this and encouraging them to make this leap and find the right environment aligned with their core values.
And I'm so pleased that you're someone who was a business leader, got an executive coach, liked it, learned about coaching yourself. Now you've become a CEO yourself and recommend coaching for other people. Now, sometimes coaching, I don't know what the success rate is. Sometimes coaching doesn't work for people. They're not perhaps open to that. The coach isn't the right person. The fit isn't good. The coach match between the leader and the individual isn't good. Sometimes people are at different stages of their life. They might need a coach who's got some great questions for your own answers. Other times you might need a great mentor who's got some great answers to your questions or some other experiences of what they've seen, and they've got credibility in the marketplace that you're in, and they can direct you to a network of other people. What's your advice to people who are listening out there about when they're trying to find their coach, or whether they need coaching, or is it just a complete waste of time and just therapy on a stick? I mean, what's your view?
Couldn't agree more how important it is, the right match. I think the very basic is chemistry. That's where it starts from. If it doesn't feel right, is the right or both? Actually, the coach can say, no, it's not for me, as well as the coachee. This is the first starting point. And and actually, the conversation what I have still with the students who I mentor, because on the side I'm still working for the coaching academy, who is the biggest trainer of coaches in the UK, and the question comes up that how do I know? It is the importance of we call it an intake session, an initial conversation, when you discover when you have to be open and transparent. Yeah, if that's not there from both sides. The coach needs to be open, and you have to want to have those changes and describe what you want. The more time you spend on that one, finding the right intervention, and even any point of time into your coaching, they're stopping and asking the questions. Yeah, it's coming back to my advice to my younger self as well. Speak up if something doesn't feel right. It won't be right. I believe that coaching can help everyone who wants to be helped. Maybe different levels, maybe at a bit different times, but the more open and transparent you are, the more you're going to get out of your coaching sessions.
Yeah, it's really good you said that. I'm giving a talk to about 200 leaders at the Boarding School Association, so all the headmasters of the famous UK schools like Harrow and Eton and Winchester and the rest. And yeah, I'm a little bit in fear and trepidation. It's in a week's time, but I've prepared a lot. I've spent a lot of days writing the speech, but I've learned a lot in the process. And it's reminded me of some of the lessons from the other leaders of the 365 I've spoken to, like you, and the stories they share. But I think this point about the right fit, but also I asked the leaders, when was the last time you were dead wrong? You failed as a leader. And I'm going to get the audience to participate. And it's going to be interesting to see who admits that they have. And for the ones that haven't, I've got what I call the Mandela versus Trump test. So if they think they've never failed, they could pass the Mandela test. And Mandela says, I never fail, I always win, or I learn something. So that attitude of it's not failure, it's learning. I either succeed or I learn something, which I quite like. That's a healthy attitude to thinking that you're never wrong. Or there's the Trump one, which is he has got that red MAGA hat, which says Trump was right about everything. And that view that some leaders had, and there's a female leader I met the other day, and I said, when was the last time you were wrong? She goes, I'm never wrong. I'm always right. I go, you're always right? Yeah, I may be opinionated, but I am actually always right. And I go, Houston, we have a problem. If you believe you are right all the time, there is a problem. I'm sure I can disabuse you of that, but it's concerning me that you haven't got the humility to go, what if I'm wrong? What if we're wrong? I mean, look at many of the problems that we're facing, like before COVID, if governments had gone, okay, what if we haven't got a good response to a global pandemic? What would you do then? Let's look at what if this happened? Could we handle it? If not, what are we going to do about those things? I don't know what your view is about that idea about ever admitting you're wrong, you failed, and you have space to improve. What's your thoughts?
One of the biggest difference working for a big corporation versus running a B Corp business. There's one of the core values for us is transparency. We have to create that safe environment. At the same time, I can't just expect people to speak up and be honest and accept failures, show vulnerability. We talk about a lot that you can't grow without showing vulnerability. We need to create this, and as leaders, we create this safe environment and encourage people to take risks and learn from it. We're always talking about learning. And I'm using lots of the, as you say, the learnings from the misleaders in the big corporations, where we've seen it. I think it's very typical that corporate leaders are mirroring politicians. So the type of things what you're talking about, Trump, you see it in a corporate world as well, and this is one of these dangers. What's happening out in the political environment today, that it sneaks into the corporate world very, very easily.
You are really onto something there, Zsuzsanna, and it really disappointed me to see the way that big corporations went and paid homage to Trump on bended knee. People who'd, like Facebook CEO, who'd opposed and been a Democrat, and suddenly realized that in his commercial interests, he better suck up to Donald Trump and go and visit him in Mar-a-Lago and tell him he actually helped him win the election by all the adverts they put out there to targeted people. A bit like dunnhumby, they had their Cambridge Analytica who knew exactly what your thoughts were, and they could target you with misinformation. So it's disappointing to see, as you say, it's not just people go, oh, you're getting very political, Jonathan, all about this authoritarian. Let it go. No. The problem is the political acceptance of norm is what the corporations then pay homage to. Look what happened with Hitler. He had all the big industrial leaders all paid homage to him in the 30s before he even started winning in the wars. So they were all behind him. And this is what we've got with some of the authoritarians, that the business leaders don't want to be picked on. They want to have an environment where they can make as much money as possible, regardless of the moral compass, that they forget their moral compass completely. And that's where you and I talk about misleaders, and they create environments which are not psychologically safe. And people are fearful, just as people are fearful of speaking out in America in case they get their green card removed or they can't study at university there. Apparently, I'm now just reading this morning that a lot of the British top universities are having far more applicants from America and other countries coming to the UK now, to the UK universities, who would have normally applied to Harvard and the Ivy League ones, because they don't feel it's safe to go to America because of the suppression of their views and their chances of being evicted. So I think you're onto something really important with psychological safety. It's part of what I call health quotient. When we look at the Inspiring Leadership Compass, not only your physical health, your mental health, but your psychological health. I think it's one of the big ones of today. And the other one is what I call CQ, cultural quotient, measuring the culture and the diversity. And DE&I seems to be now being suppressed by certainly Trump. When you've seen him, I had the Daily Stoic, Ryan Holiday, wasn't able to give his talk because they didn't want him to mention about the fact that 600 books have been banned from the Naval Academy. And he spoke out about that. But we're seeing D&I becoming unpopular in a lot of corporations now because they're following the political lead of people like Trump and Orban, and you've got the Turkish Erdogan doing the same, suppressing certain writings and certain books. What's your view?
Oh, absolutely, and one of the difficulty in this change is that this is very quick. Undoing things is happening super quickly. While we know how difficult it has been to get to the stage where we are with DNI and many other topics, yeah, I've seen it. One of the literally from one day to the other, one of these big organizations. Suddenly recruitment processes is not important anymore. You are proving those points of having enough diverse candidates on the list. Crossing a policy from literally one day to the other is very easy. Bringing these things back into the organization, establishing those values, will be much harder again, hopefully, when we get back there.
Yeah. I think this problem of, and again, Neil Basu in the Met Police, there were some senior officers all got together in one of the conference rooms who were of color or black officers, and they couldn't fill a table of 20 of them. And this is in a force, I've forgotten how big it is, 26,000 people. And there was, less than 20 of them couldn't even get round a table. And what worries me is now it's become cool to say this is woke and let's forget all this, DEI rubbish and just get on and have strongman. Because, of course, another book is called The Age of the Strongman by Gideon Rachman, an economist who writes for The Economist. And he said what's so worrying, and also there's Autocracy Inc. By a very good writer, female writer who's gone out of my mind, but it'll come back, Anne Applebaum. She writes very good things on autocracies. And I'd love to get her on the podcast. So if Anne, if you're listening, or everybody who knows Anne, let's have you on the podcast. But they're saying this is really worrying. The age of the strong man, white males in all the dominant roles, and not enough female leaders, which give that diversity where you've got the psychological safety. When it's a bunch of blokes all together, they just think like each other. They don't innovate and think widely. What's your thoughts?
Live this through in the corporate environment, unfortunately, far too much. And this is exactly the worry that had to happen in a relatively subtle way, and that in that environment, when they ended up making redundant the last few female MDs on the week of diversity. That's how things happened, and this was actually the turning point for me. That was a year exactly before I left, recognizing it, how this is getting stronger and stronger. So I don't think they need too much encouragement by the politicians. It's happening in that corporate world anyway. So undoing any of those goods, what we have established there is really dangerous. And for me, being in a world when we're as a B Corp company advocating for the right thing, and seeing that actually companies who know bigger organization actually started to acknowledge that when we go there as vendors and we show that we are B Corp, that actually gives us some advantage. So I think there are green shoots, regardless of the existing daily politics. I think we see that as well, and we tend to target and work with those companies who actually acknowledge that. So our own way, whilst we are a middle-sized company, we can still this way influence bigger corporations towards better.
That's really good. And let's just go a little bit on a couple of other topics around the Inspiring Leadership Compass. The moral quotient, True North, MQ, moral integrity, your values, your beliefs. Tell me a story about sort of the early days when you let your moral quotient slip, but you got it back again. And now how you had an opportunity where it was a moral integrity choice, and you knew as a B Corp, you knew exactly what to do. Just perhaps give me one example from your early days when you perhaps could have got it better, and one idea where now you know exactly what to do.
Yeah, definitely. The early stages, we talked about this, the lack of speaking up, following authority without challenging it, not really relying on my critical thinking skills and confidence. It's interesting you mentioned Fritz Zegers, because we had quite a few opportunities in that when it was clearly not right what direction the business was being established. Certain things, launching lending businesses without setting up the whole backup operation, or we're going to deal with collections later. These type of things, which with hindsight, it did not feel right. Was I absolutely sure that I know the direction? No. Did I have questions about them? Yes. Should I have raised the questions? Yes. So that's where at that time I did not dare felt the right way, giving into the authority. Who am I in this room where everybody is more experienced, more senior than I am. So now that has changed, and several examples. We actually, as a business, we have a process to follow, that we would like to work with companies who want to do the right thing. And this is a very, very wide way of describing what it is. But it's been quite recent that one of the big soft drink manufacturing companies, let's say it that way, one of the biggest companies in this world, they approached us, and you see, even in our business, that for a few seconds you might get carried away. Yeah, so I was listening my team talking about the opportunity and what it could be, and how we could serve what they wanted. I had to stop them and say, can we just pause and see, who are we talking about? What is the real intention behind this project? And this is the key secret, because we are actually on the mission of working with bad companies who want to be better. That's okay, as long as we see the right sign that they want to do the right thing for the right reason. Very happy to embark on their journey and encourage them. But we actually went back and turned down a significant size business which we could have delivered easily, could have met the expectations what they wanted, but we knew that was not the right way of doing it, not for the right reasons.
Well done. Well done.
And this is the biggest one, but this we meet this part still too often than I would like to.
Yeah, well, I think back in my early days of coaching, right at the very beginning, over 20 years ago, where there was a female leader. She'd been accused of bullying. She was quite toxic. They had given her a coach. She didn't want a coach. So that was a difficult one in the first place. You know, you need a coach, like we'll solve you by giving you a coach. Always a bad choice. They should have actually fired her, but that's another story. Anyway, I'd been told that she'd met with a previous coach for an hour's chemistry, and after 15 minutes had literally almost thrown the guy out, you know, just rejected him, just like. And I remember we were in my chemistry, it was about 2 weeks later, and they said, Jonathan, we think, you know, this is it's a tough one, but we think you could do this. Like, okay, yeah. So I'm going to kind of save the day and, you know, turn the organization around, help her become a better person. And when you've got a psychopath, it's always a bit difficult, but that's another story. And I was with her, and she was charming, and she just very elegantly dressed and seemed to have it all. And, you know, very smart education, top Ivy League university, this kind of stuff. And I happened to say to her, have you met any other coaches? She looked me straight in the eye and she said, no, I've not met any other coaches. And I was going, you have. I know you rejected this one. You have. And I didn't say anything. I went, oh, okay. Yeah, right. Okay. And we agreed to work together. It was a nightmare, because she was always doing the bullying that she did to her own staff. When she'd bullied them, she'd then buy them a present, some flowers or a teddy bear or some chocolates. And I remember once walking through the office with someone else taking me to meet her in a meeting room. And I saw flowers and chocolates, about 3 or 4 desks. And I thought, those are her victims. And I carried on walking through. And luckily I had coaching supervision, because I started to doubt myself. She was ghosting me, and I was going, oh my God, I'm a really bad coach. And, you know, perhaps I didn't say that. Perhaps I said this. And she really made me, she played with my head. She was literally, it was like dealing with Donald Trump. You know, I said I was going to end the Ukraine war in the first day. Well, the first 100 days. Well, maybe not the first 100 days, but I said I was going to, I did it. I ended the Ukraine war in a day. No, you didn't. And it's still going on. And I look back on that and I think, you utter coward. Why didn't you call it out? And I was in those early days and desperate to prove myself. I, needed the money, all this kind of, oh gosh, all the kind of wrong things. And it's those moments when you need this, I have a metaphorical now. What helps me is I have a metaphorical group of my father, my mother, who are both dead, and various leaders that I've had the honor of working with who have moral courage. And I go, if they're all watching you now, Jonathan, as you're alone in this room with this person, what would they want you to say? Don't let them down. Just say, I'm sorry, as I have done, this is not for me. I don't think I'm the right coach. I think you should find somebody else. This particular guy was a Russian investment banker. And he went, I have a lot of people who they do this kind of work. I say, oh yeah, they sound like, white collar psychopaths. He said, yes. I said, do you want me to learn how to get away from working for them? No. I want to be like them. I went, you want to be like these white collar psychopath bosses who work for you, who bully people, intimidate them, and make lots of money just for themselves? Yes. I said, I'm not the right one. I was able to walk away from that one. But it's just, in the old days, you'd easily give in for that one.
And coaching can help a lot to build this confidence with people, connecting people to their core values, and give them the tools as well. And even in the business, just to encourage, not everybody's got this imaginary family support behind them, but even just as the pilots working with checklists, just make sure that you answer certain questions before you engage.
Yeah. My little dog have a little bark in the background. I think having that checklist, it is always important to check in with yourself. And one of the things that is so important for the success of you as a CEO, but also the people you've worked with and the people you lead, is their emotional and social intelligence. It's 6 times more important for performance than IQ, but we always used to hire for IQ and not for EQ. What is your view on the importance of EQ and listening skills, and what be your top tip you'd give people?
Being a CEO who is a coach, this is a given. So actually, my whole leadership team is trained for the fundamentals of coaching, and one of the first things is when we point out that we have 2 ears and 1 mouth. There is a reason. Listening is one of those key skills which we are teaching, and we mentioned it earlier. The psychological safety, that is the foundation for people being able to express themselves and express feelings and dealing with each other's feelings. Especially in my businesses, because we are community managers, we are people's people, and so actually focusing on the development of leaders, of encouraging their teams to develop emotional intelligence and relationship building skills. That is actually the secret source of what we do, community managers.
Yeah, it's so important. And then the other aspect, which I'm always interested in, is resilience. We've all had setbacks, we've all had disappointments, but is there a story you could tell us of how you picked yourself up in times of adversity when it was all going wrong, but you picked yourself back up again and sorted yourself out?
Other than the coaching experience, well, they had that, where it's a combination of external and internal resources. I think, to me, the best tool is sport. We haven't mentioned this, but sport has always played a very significant role in my life. So those darker moments when it still happens occasionally. Those examples, what we said, it happened the other day as well, that maybe a tougher discussion with a colleague, when I should have pointed out certain things, that behavior just was not right. But for whatever reason, on that given day, I was not at my best to deal with it. And my way of getting my own strength back is exercise, especially squash is my passion, where I can release energy, very high intensity, very high focus, getting it out, get the oxygen flowing, get the confidence back. And one of the key point is daring going back. That's what I'm trying to teach and demonstrate, role model for my team as well, that it's okay, even if you didn't catch it at that point of time, there, go back the following day, called the meeting, discussed it in a very calm, measured way of giving confidence and giving feedback to the person, and we sorted the issue. I always say that you have to be okay with yourself and ready and healthy in order to help others. If you don't look after yourself, you are not able to look after your team or your family.
Yes, that's really good. I'm pleased that you've encouraged that resilience to go back. Those 10 words, 3 phrases that are so important for psychological safety and vulnerability. The first one is, I was wrong. The second one is, I don't know. And the third one is, I need some help. I was wrong. I don't know. I need some help. And only the good, strong, vulnerable leaders can do that. You'd never see that with JD Vance, and you'd never see that with Trump and his entourage. Trump is always right. And that is why we call them misleaders as opposed to inspiring leaders. The next one is brand quotient, BQ. You're big into 360 feedback, part of your coaching culture. I saw a very good discussion the other day where some organizations get feedback wrong. I'm going to give you some feedback. And essentially, they're just attacking someone and ripping them apart. But interesting view on feedback. And the other approach, which is quite a healthy one, is, would you like some advice for the future? Or please give me some advice on one thing I could improve, which is quite future focused. And then that person's able to give something which would help them be even better. So sometimes, if done correctly, being given some advice that you've actually asked for can be very helpful. Feedback is very good, but it needs to be done the right way. What's your advice to people on the importance as a CEO of having 360 feedback, so you're not living in that sort of fake world?
Very fundamental. But I think the secret of feedback, that there is no one way of doing it. And in an organization, you cannot just use one way of giving feedback. We tried multiple ways. Should it be anonymous? Should it be open? Should it be up, down? Should it be peers? All this. So ideally, finding a combination of these is the best one, what we found. So we actually have a structured way of doing it, other than encouraging the ad hoc individual one-to-one, asking the question, giving. Some people, we've got lots of introverted people who might not be great when you just ask this question. They would not be able to do that. So we allow for the preparation as well, through the system, through questions, and encouraging on the spot as well. Obviously not in front of the big audience, but the quicker the feedback it is, closer to the time, and the more evidence-based, and from every direction. Yeah. And it's very important we talk about the goods as well as the bads. We spend our team meetings half every other week. We have an all hands call when half of the time is spent on shout outs. That's a type of feedback. Yeah, feedback, we think about that it's constructive. It always has to be something you're not doing well. It's such even sometimes more important to actually just build that confidence we talked about earlier through giving positive feedback.
It's very, very important. I'm delighted with what you're doing. It's really world class. 2 thoughts I have, and then we're going to go on to talk about favorite book before we end with the top tip. But I saw it go badly wrong in a couple of the big banks, where they went, we've got a system of 360 feedback. Okay, and it's linked to our bonuses. Okay, how does it really work? Well, we don't want to get anybody's bonus low, so we just say wonderful things about each other. We all sort of collude, essentially, and we say he's great, and we never give any negative feedback about each other. So when you're trying to do feedback in that culture, there's no helpful feedback. It's all just playing. They're gaming it. They're gaming the system to try and get the most money for themselves. So that doesn't work. One place I saw when I was a professor on the exec MBA at London City University, and in the sessions that I did with the students, one of them who worked, I think, at LinkedIn, said we have an app that we take round with us, and when we do a pitch to a client, we come away from the pitch, we all together give feedback on the app about, Zsuzsanna, what I thought you did really well was this, this, and this. And an even better is, have the courage to speak out early because you had some really good ideas. And you would go, Jonathan, I'm just putting in here that what I thought you did was this, this, and this, but also an even better would be this. And they have to do, what worked and what would make them even better. And that goes into a data system, which is part of their appraisal and their quarterly review. So it's done in the moment rather than, oh, crikey, I've got to write Zsuzsanna's report. It's a year on. Oh, I remember what happened last week. Recency effect.
Recency bias.
Can't remember what happened 12 months ago. Goodness, no. So that's just my thoughts. Let's get your favorite book, a book you'd recommend to people. I'm a dyslexic, so any audiobooks that you would recommend, well worth listening to, which would help as a leader. What would you recommend?
I apologize. My preference is the total opposite. I love reading as opposed to.
Well, let's hope it does both. Let's hope it does both.
Reading, yes, of course, you can. Most of it. I think I have to say Kahneman. I think
Daniel Kahneman.
There is a reason for that Nobel Prize. Thinking Fast and Slow is one of those classics which always lies there, and I take it out again and again.
Yeah,
it's not one of those books which you sit down and listen to in one go. That's one of those which talks about the two ways of thinking: the fast thinking, which is from the assumption based, how we make quick decisions, but the right for those slowing down and analyzing and understanding, and the two, how they play together and how they can go wrong.
Yeah, exactly. Fantastic. That's very good. Thank you for the recommendation. Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman. So would you end with introducing yourself, talk about what you're doing now, a little bit about your career history, and then what your top leadership tip is, something practical that people can apply? Over to you.
Thank you. So I'm Zsuzsanna Recsey. I'm the CEO of Standing on Giants, a B Corp agency. We're building online communities for big brands like Airbnb, Tesco's, Lenovo's. And my background is in big corporation, banking. I worked in all different countries, in emerging market environments, developed market environments. And I got trained as an executive coach, as well as I got an MBA from Chicago Booth. And I'm super passionate about building sustainable and ethical businesses, which I've been lucky to do for the last 5 years, and growing a business as such. And in my spare time, I love sports. I love traveling. Squash is my favorite sport. I love discovering new destinations and listening or reading interesting books. And my top tip, I think one of the most powerful tools for a leader is intuition. And when I'm saying intuition is not about making spontaneous decisions. It is about connecting to those core values, quite often unspoken, undiscovered core values, and embarking on that journey which is truly aligned to those core values. If you do that, then magic happens. The world aligns around you and supports you on that journey. And it doesn't mean that you know all the answers from the beginning. It is the direction. The intuition is telling you the direction, and it's very important that you learn and pivot and try and learn from it and do it again. Just watch the world. It's the very, very unexpected ways the support comes into your way. So really, in brief, just follow your intuition, try change, pivot, and watch the world to align and help you on your journey.
Well, Zsuzsanna, thank you very much indeed. And congratulations on a very successful career and being the CEO of Standing on Giants. Thank you for sharing your wisdom and experience.
Thank you, Jonathan. It was my pleasure.